In episode number 407 of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, we cover Tom Ellis' return for season 6 of Lucifer.
We also have all new details on David Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad.
And for our comic book highlight this week, we review a portion of Catwoman 80th Anniversary number 1.
All of this and so much more on today's show.
Hello and welcome to the award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I am your Emperor, Kelli.
And I am Parasol Lady Daniel.
With your beautiful pink dress and your little umbrella to keep your skin safe.
Just like a Southern Belle.
That's you. For those of you joining us for the very first time, the way we format the show is first we go over some news covering all those topics I just mentioned. We go into our Patreon shoutouts, our comic book highlight, and then we go into the Brocat block, which is what happened with Daniel and I this week.
Kicking things off this week with the bit of news that Kelli's probably most excited for, aside from our story, our Tom King story and Catwoman's 80th anniversary, is Tom Ellis, who has signed a deal to return for a 6th season of Lucifer after, quote, lengthy, difficult negotiations, end quote. This is all according to Deadline.
Of course he was going to sign on for another season because there wouldn't be another season without him. Season 6 would not happen if Tom Ellis wasn't here.
Quite literally, showrunners Heidi Modrovich and Joe Henderson both said that the rest of the cast had already signed on for a new season. They were just waiting on Tom Ellis. So it was basically that deal that I had mentioned like a month ago of mention that your cast and your friends are already on board and they're just waiting on you. That's how you get Tom Ellis to sign on. You use the guilt trip. I don't know if that's what worked. I don't know if they needed to put another zero on his check, but he has finally signed on.
I am so excited. I'm still waiting for season 5. I love this show. I binged it all. I need to binge it again before the next season comes out, but very, very happy to be hearing that we will get another season of Lucifer.
They haven't called this the final season, right? They called number 5 the final season, which negates it. Doesn't automatically mean that 6 is the final.
They called 4 the final season, and then they came out with a 5, which is awesome. Still, I mean, of course, still waiting to see it, but it's done. We're just waiting for it to show up on Netflix. And yes, that they called the final for sure season, and then they announced number 6. So I don't know, sky's the limit. It could go on forever.
I think they should call this the 6th season, the final one, unless they negotiated multiple seasons out of Tom Ellis, especially with how long these negotiations went on for. They probably don't want to go through this one more time. They probably said, all right, if we're going to do this, let's do another 3 seasons and that's it, because we're not going to have you asking for even more money thinking that you're a Netflix original.
But he is.
Technically he is, but he's not bringing in Netflix subscribers. There's not a million moms that are signed on for Netflix just for Lucifer.
But it was one of the most watched shows. If you look at the most streamings, it's still in like the top 10.
If I were Netflix, I'd be like, we were kidding. It wasn't the most watched.
Oh my God. So he would ask for as much money. If they were smart, they would really play up the 6 in that season 6 and be like, season 666. And we'd be like, woo, because it's Lucifer.
And 7 is perfect, 7 heaven. So that all works. They have to figure out something for 8, though.
Just get out of here. No, mine was clever. You've never seen heaven in that show. I don't think we'll ever go, but we've seen hell.
Well, season 7 is now canceled thanks to that little comment. So no more season 7.
You were in control of season 7?
No, but we know we can campaign against certain things, especially after the Snyder Cut. So with this one, season 6 might be the final one, I'm thinking.
Well, we will see. I still hold out hope, as many others do, coming off of the heels of the Snyder Cut and all the great things you were able to accomplish to get his original vision.
And something else we're pulling for now is release the Ayer cut. Suicide Squad director David Ayer tweeted over the change of Joker's scenes compared to the trailers and the theatrical cut of the film.
He said, quote, "This was reshot because the tone was too dark. My first act was a normally constructed film. I took my inspiration from Nolan. There were real scenes with incredible acting between Jared and Margot. Joker was terrifying. Harley was complex. This trailer nailed the tone and intention of the film I made. Methodical, layered, complex, beautiful and sad. After the BVS reviews, shell-shocked the leadership at the time, and the success of Deadpool, my soulful drama was beaten into a comedy. End quote.
That's sad. That's extremely sad, and I'm thinking that one day we will see these original takes of these scenes, these original shots of it, because you can even see from that Comic-Con trailer a lot of the original scenes that we never saw in the film itself. And not even as in they got cut, they got completely reshot. The scene of him shocking Harley Quinn during her origin retelling are completely redone, with them bringing Jared Leto back on and apparently telling him not to be so dark, not to be so scary. We need this to be less BVS and more apparently Deadpool.
I'm still very conflicted on this one. Would I like to see the original intention of Suicide Squad? Absolutely. Did I really like Suicide Squad anyway? Yeah, I did. And when we hear of these things that were different, that should have been different, they sound great in theory, right? They sound like they would really add to the story that they were trying to tell, but I really like the execution otherwise. And who's to say that I don't know. I'm going to put my foot in my mouth. I'm not going to say anything. I liked the movie as it was.
I liked it too, and if you go back and hear our review, we did enjoy Suicide Squad, and I think that does tell us that even down deeper, there's an even better film behind all of this. And as we know, a lot of the flashbacks to the character's origins, we know that apparently there's a scene of Slipknot being taken down by Wonder Woman, just like we saw the Flash, and I think we talked about that last week too. So to see those scenes, to see the more intense relationship between the Joker and Harley Quinn, it sounds like there's only a win-win behind this. And if you look at the original Comic-Con trailer, that does fit BVS way more than what we got in the theatrical cut. And while I did enjoy the theatrical cut as well, when and if we get the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad, that's another version that, one, we know that there's a good film in there regardless. If we get even more of it without the crazy editing on it, then we now have two versions of the film that we personally enjoy. And the movie did do well in the box office when it first came out, just like BVS did, just like Man of Steel did. The big misstep was Justice League for many reasons. And yes, those situations are different. And even David Ayer has taken to Twitter and said that even if we don't get it right away, that's fine. It's not something that he's overly concerned with. He says that everyone on crew has moved on since then. And that, I think, shows us that this situation is, once again, not well, let's see how this does so that we can get Suicide Squad 2 together and maybe do the Birds of Prey movie that we wanted to do properly, or the Gotham City Sirens. And I know he had signed on to both of them at one point and dropped out eventually, unlike Zack Snyder's Justice League, where it sounds like they negotiated for more films out of Zack other than just his cut. So yeah, very different situation, but that also tells us that his cut of Suicide Squad is easier to do, easier to sell to us than Zack Snyder's is.
We can hold out hope, like we've said for the last few weeks, one thing at a time. Eventually, Warner Brothers AT&T is going to be like, nah, guys.
One thing that I've started seeing once again are people on Twitter saying, no, move on. David Ayer's cut. We don't need this. And I'm like, this sounds really fucking familiar. This sounds like something we've heard over the last 3 years. What does that tell us? That we need to fucking keep going then, because guess what? It worked extremely well the first time. We're already organizing campaigns for David Ayer's Suicide Squad. We already launched a few. This is the start of it. We know we can do this, and this one's even easier to obtain. There's no reason to not do this. There's no reason for AT&T not to do it, and there's no reason for us not to pay money and raise money for good causes, all in the name of David Ayer's Suicide Squad, all in the name of artistic integrity, all in the name of fandom and our love of these characters and these versions of the characters.
How realistic do you think it would be that we would see this movie eventually? Year or two from now.
Within 5 years, I think we're going to get David Ayer's Suicide Squad. I think it's going to be a companion release with Zack Snyder's probably within 5 years of those.
Okay. I mean, I'm down for it. I'd watch it. I love the Joker and Harley relationship in that movie, and to see how different it would have been, and more Joker Harley than what we actually got.
So this is not the only extended cut that we're apparently hearing about. In response to David Ayer's tweet on how his film was reshot, Birds of Prey director Cathy Yan tweeted in support.
She said, quote, "I'm so sorry this happened to you, David. I know the pain." End quote.
Ooh,
Throwing
what
some
does
shade.
that mean? There's no shade there.
That's some tea.
That's not going against him, though.
No.
She's saying that the studio's doing the same to her, and this is the first we've heard of this happening to her.
Throwing shade to the studio.
The only thing I had heard about with Birds of Prey were changes about the supposed dick pics in the diamond, and that ended up either being reshot or changed or never happened. Cathy Yan came out on Twitter and called out a really well-known journalist that is big with the movement, especially Grace Randolph. And there was a lot of controversy between the two, a lot of Cathy Yan telling her, no, that's not how it happened. You didn't work on the film. And there were some names thrown around, some insults for sure. And yeah, with all this, however Cathy handled it, whether or not you think it was right or not, we got more information about her cut of the film. And it does sound like there were some heavy changes. And we know that this was an earlier directing project for Cathy. I know she had talked about how she had to call Patty Jenkins and get some support over the process of making Birds of Prey. And I'm thinking maybe some of that was they're maybe not letting me do my project as I intended. And, you know, she got some words of encouragement or support from Patty, but kind of saying, well, you got to work within the system. This is all, I'm not sure what it is. This is all me just guessing, but it sounds like people are, and I don't think we're going to even campaign for this because Birds of Prey is not really in Zack Snyder's plan of the DCEU. So I at least I don't have interest. I didn't like Birds of Prey, but there's a slight little campaign or a slight little movement on release the Yan cut. I don't think that's going to get anywhere near the support that David Ayer or Zack are getting.
I mean, playing devil's advocate, if you're fighting for artistic integrity of directors, then you should fight for this too.
If we get more information about this and it turns out that there is another version of the film, then yeah, we probably should. I don't think it will happen, and it'll depend on the interest once we know, is there another version of Birds of Prey, or did they force the changes as they were filming? We have no idea yet on what's happening. And I think as time continues, Cathy will probably open up more on what version of Birds of Prey either exists or she wanted to make or intended to make.
It's really tough. It's a very difficult space because, like we've mentioned before, these kind of things have always happened in movies and for the most part will probably continue. So I almost feel as, I don't know, I'm not a director. I don't want to say the wrong things, but I almost feel like you understand that kind of comes with the role, right? You're going to come in with this great vision, what you think is the correct direction, and somebody else is going to look at it and tell you, no, we need to change these things. So I'm happy that they're fighting for it and letting us know, hey, I had a different vision. But at the same time, I feel like that should also kind of be understood that those things were going to get pushed back and changed.
Yeah, there's always going to be some changes and mandated, I think you had called it compromises between the studio and the director, but it's finding that healthy balance between the two where both parties are happy is very difficult to do. And I think that Zack's situation is an exceptional one because it sounds like he was not willing to relent on these new terms and would only agree if they would do things in a way that both parties were happy. But even with this these tweets from Cathy Yan, Twitter user @CaresDaniela did tweet out, quote, "We did change the world apparently. Did we just give artists a voice?" End quote. Because after all of this, you know, David Ayer wasn't saying much. Cathy Yan definitely didn't say anything before this. And with Zack Snyder, that change that we all helped and promoted and moved and changed this version and helped out Zack and his family and all the people that he worked with, there's a positive change here for, I think, other directors to have the confidence to say, yes, this happened to me as well.
You're like Captain EO. We are here to change the world.
Gonna change the world.
Gonna change, woohoo! Shooting that like spooky lady. Everybody wears nice pants and skips around now.
It's a great change. I think it's positive.
It is. It's a very positive change. I think that it definitely did give a voice and some confidence to these directors to come out and say these things. But like with any movement, anytime something like this happens, my concern, my very real fear is that we will become desensitized to it, right? It will become every director is saying, well, they made me change these things and I didn't want to. And now we're like, oh, well, everybody's saying that.
Well, you don't think that's a good thing overall, though, for directors moving forward where they will have more freedom with the project as opposed to having that fear of, I really can't say anything?
I hope they do have more freedom, and I hope they do step forward and kind of push back against these things. But at the end of the day, studios are still going to ask for that compromise, and potentially you're going to get directors who are now going to say, no, I absolutely refuse to compromise, which is totally within their right to say that if that's what they want to do and that's what they want to stand behind. And then studios say, okay, well, then we don't need you. Like Guillermo del Toro, if he had just compromised on his budget for a few more films, how many more of his films would we have gotten? And how amazing would those films have been with the $4 million in practical effects for one small plant?
Well, that's where we get a lot of that leftover creative differences stuff that we've gotten, especially from the Star Wars films. So I think when you're dealing with Disney, they're probably a lot less willing to compromise on their franchises and on their characters. So a lot of that is going to happen and has already happened, and as we've seen. But if this at least lays off a little bit on the studio side, especially if, and I mean, Zack Snyder's Justice League is going to do well. We've already promised, the movement has already said we've subbed to HBO Max. We've supported them on that end. When they release a 4K or Blu-ray, we know we're going to buy multiple copies.
Of course.
So we have to hold our end of the bargain, and we will, based on our track record of donating to these causes, in showing AT&T and HBO Max and Warner Brothers that there is money to be made in Zack's vision of the DCEU. And I think when we see that success, that is Justice League next year, that's when the studios will take a second look, and maybe at least Warner Brothers might take a second look and say, all right, let's see what we're willing to let them, what kind of freedoms we're letting them have with these characters and with these projects.
Right, and I think that may be a potential with Warner Brothers. But I guess kind of the point I'm driving home is, do you not feel that people as a whole would become desensitized? Let's say 40 more directors come out and say, they made me change my vision for this.
I think it would be contingent on that specific movie, that specific fan base, the size of the audience. Because for something like the Trank Fantastic Four film, I'm one of the guys that wants to see his original version of it, but that crowd is a lot smaller than Zack Snyder's Justice League. It also depends on the story behind what caused those changes. You know, if they're done dirty like Zack was, in which, you know, he was in the middle of grieving for his daughter, and then behind his back, they end up changing most of the film. There's a lot of bitterness there. So that story in itself is unique. David Ayers is more involved with the vision of the whole extended universe based on them wanting to move away from Zack's movies. So that in itself is a unique situation. So I think it's going to depend on each film and how much we actually know or how much we've seen of a certain cut. It's kind of like Suicide Squad in Justice League, where we can pull up on YouTube 2 different versions of the fucking film. We can see the 2 different versions of the scenes, and sometimes it's drastically different, like in Zack's. So I think it's also going to depend on how much of that we actually have access to, too.
I like how you call him Zack, like you two are friends. My buddy Zack.
I mean, we all might as well know him, right? we interpret his mind already in the pictures and images.
You did use the stars to track his exact location in California several times.
From this coffee shop. So that means he's down the road from the WB studios. We're not insane. We're very thorough.
Okay. Is that what it is? Not stalkers, Kelli. Clearly not stalkers.
Anything else you have on this topic about directors or different cuts?
No, I don't think so. We'll still hold out hope for Suicide Squad, the original cut for that. Of course, we're waiting for Zack Snyder's Justice League. We'll get that next year.
One thing we didn't talk about, and I didn't put it in the notes, is about Diablo's family and that scene that he had and that courage or that type of story that they gave him. And David did say that they had to fight hard to have the story told of he unintentionally kills his family, and they didn't want that on film. They thought it was too much, but they were able to at least get that. Do you think it would have been very different if he instead maybe burned them and they're like, oh, look, you're out of control. And he's like, I almost killed my family. And then he puts himself away and stops, as opposed to him destroying his world around him?
I feel like it would make a big difference. I feel like you cared more for the character because you got to see that background, and he just kind of let his anger get the best of him and destroyed his family. And the whole message behind that is he doesn't use his powers because he felt it hurt his family, but ultimately he has to use them to save his family because the Suicide Squad becomes his family.
Right.
And we obviously see him, at least in the cut of the film that we got, make that ultimate sacrifice for them. So it's almost like a redemption of sorts. So yeah, do I think for the majority of the audience that it would make a difference? Probably not. But you have to think, okay, even though we know that he murdered them, you don't see anything really gruesome within that. Like he's carrying one of their bodies out and the house is on fire, and you just know that he murdered them.
Well, she turns to ash like in his arms.
Oh, I do remember that. You're right. Still not that gruesome.
Right.
It's still not terrible. Whereas if you burned them, you would have to like see nasty burns.
Right. Yeah, I think it would have. It definitely changed. The main thing that it does is it shows you that the Suicide Squad is his new family, and I think it pays off later on in the film. So I as opposed to if they're still out there, like you can still say, well, even though they're distancing themselves from him, they're still there. So he still has a family somewhere out there, because I'm sure he doesn't say, oh no, they're gone forever if they're still alive, right? So that does separate that and gives him, I think, even more of a reason to not use his powers. It's almost like this is what destroyed his life. It's his curse, and he refuses to use it. And we saw that in the film.
He was such a cool character.
I also hope that in his cut, we get more Amanda Waller. Even her scenes were way different. You know, in the dinner scene when she's talking to the generals and the other members of Congress. I don't know what it was. Like,
members of Congress.
I don't know. And her scenes in the trailer were a lot more serious and grounded, and then you see it in this, and it's a little more lively, which is a little bizarre when you compare the two also. And you can see the scene differences in the reshoots, in the makeup and the hair and everything. So it'll be curious to see more of that as we continue and learn more about his cut of the film.
I want to go listen to that soundtrack. Every time we talk about this movie, I'm like, I have to listen to those songs again, because I just hear them in my mind. I'm like, oh, they were so good.
Well, that movie is now available on HBO Max, one of the leading streaming services out there, available now for as little as $11.99 a month.
Speaking of which, what other goodies have you discovered from HBO Max this week?
The fucking Criterion Collection.
The
There's
who?
a shit ton of classic films.
The what?
On HBO Max, even separate from TCM. If you go to foreign, I believe, when you're browsing, you'll get more than the American classic films. You'll also get foreign classic films like Seven Samurai. So this is a collection of films that are considered to be some of the best of all time.
That's awesome.
And people were saying, for whatever reason, HBO Max is not marketing that the Criterion Collection, some of it, over 300, I believe, over 300 movies are a part of HBO Max.
Wow.
That needs to be something that they push. And I don't know if it's because they don't want it to eat into the subscriptions of the Criterion Collection, which is its own separate service. But if they're eventually going to make HBO Max the main thing that goes up against Netflix, Disney Plus, and every other streaming service out there, like Hulu even, then they need to eventually say, no, this is going to be the service to have. This one has a little bit of everything and then some.
Well, I know what you'll be doing with all your your time, all your free time, just watching these old great films.
There's so much good stuff on there.
You're gonna
be
like, Kelly, I watched this Cranium collection.
They also updated and said that they are going to be on Roku devices. So anyone that's been like hardwiring your Roku device, and they found back-end ways to get it on there.
Of course they did. Did they look at the stars and Zack Snyder's location and and figure it out that way? If
you translate the name Zack Snyder into numbers and then multiply them by 214, that equals the unlock code for Roku.
You stand on one foot and you draw a pentagram on the floor and you surround it with some candles.
And that's metaphorically bringing back Diablo from Ayer's cut. So that's how that does it too. So it's an art in itself. It all
ties in together. Yeah. And then he comes back with the diamond full of penises. Okay, I got it. Perfect.
Which unlocks the porn version of HBO Max.
Oh my God, there's a porn version.
It is good. And I'm Also, the Batman vs. Superman Ultimate Cut, the Ultimate edition of that film, is going to be on there in July, which we probably will cover in this month's editions and the highlights for July 2020 as well. So lots of good stuff. Oh, 4K. 4K is coming to HBO Max, which was another criticism of the service.
What else? What else can you say about HBO Max?
It's fixed. There's no issues. Like, it's great. It's an amazing service. It has a great launch, a great library. If you supported release the Snyder Cut, you better have HBO Max subscribed right now. And I don't want to hear any of, well, it comes out next year, so I'll just subscribe then. No, you subscribe then and you subscribe now. You thank AT&T.
Between Netflix and HBO Max, which one would you choose?
HBO Max. Easily. HBO Max.
They do have kids programming too, like Sesame Street. They have Late Night with Elmo. It's so cute.
That's a good one,
too.
too.
Oh, not so Late Night with Elmo. Apologies.
News is a little bit lighter this week, but we do have our Marvel Comics bit of news, actually.
What are those crazy kids up to now? Oh, what are those cool cats and kittens up to now?
They are sending convention freebies to comic shops as part of its Back in Action program to help comic shops affected by the pandemic closures.
Oh, how nice.
Thanks.
Thanks.
It's an avocado.
Well, these convention freebies are not as cool as avocados. Can you imagine if they sent avocados to every store? And
that would help way more.
Just give an avocado to somebody. These include bookmarks, pins, and temporary tattoos.
Wow. Just the shit that they couldn't get rid of at conventions because conventions got canceled.
Yes. Temporary tattoos. Who still uses those?
I don't know. And they're the same ones that were from Venom number, I don't remember which one, but it's the cover of Venom #1. I think it was during Absolute Carnage they gave them away. So there's just extra things that, once again, they just unload at conventions and use them as bag stuffers. And they're like, all right, I guess the comic shops can have these.
This will help you guys. This will help you sell more books.
Back in Action here. It's like, make the fucking books returnable.
We don't want your shitty pencils.
One fucking thing.
We don't want your stupid bookmarks. Nobody's bookmarking a comic book.
Ridiculous. I don't know. Great.
Thanks. It's a bookmark.
We've got our last bit of news this week with our monthly Netflix June 2020 highlights.
These are just the highlights. It's not the full list, so only things that Daniel and I are interested in that pertain to us. You're welcome to go to your favorite search engine, type in what's new on Netflix June 2020. You can find the full list there of things arriving and things leaving.
First one is one that I watched a lot as a baby / kid / I guess toddler. It's one of the earliest movies that my mom showed me, and it was All Dogs Go to Heaven.
No, that's so dark.
It is. It's really dark.
We can't show that to Leo. No.
Have you seen it?
Yes. I saw it as a kid. Like, I watched it a lot as a kid, too. I guess that's just the era we grew up in. But I don't remember a ton of it. I remember enough, but not a ton. But I've read articles on it recently where people are like, I never realized how dark this was. And I was like, oh, shit, you're right. Like, they go to hell and everything.
It's considered a cult classic now. That's not Disney, is it?
I don't think so. I felt it was, I don't know.
Paramount or something?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't even remember who. But yeah, it was really dark. So not showing this one to Leo, but it's great that we both watched it as children. It explains a lot about us.
Also, 1995's Casper. This keeps showing back up on Netflix,
I still
and we
haven't
don't
seen
watch
this.
it.
Still haven't seen it. I feel like I used to get called Casper as a kid. Maybe that's why I don't want to watch it, because I was so white.
Oh, okay.
Somebody called me Casper once, and I was
That's
I'm sorry that I'm a redhead. Sorry.
Casper the redhead,
I guess.
I think you'd like Casper.
Yeah? Is he nice?
Yeah, he's the friendly ghost.
Leo might like Casper.
This one would be a little much. I think
okay.
it shows the Crypt Keeper at one point, and that would spook him out.
No. That would scare me. Why do you want to show me this?
I don't know if you watch this anime, but I figured you probably have something to say about it. But Cardcaptor Sakura.
I used to watch Cardcaptor Sakura all the time.
1 and 2 are both on Netflix now.
I don't remember anything about this show. I remember absolutely zero things except she was kind of a redhead. So then my friend Ashley at the time was like, she's pretty much you. And I'm like, you're right.
I guess it's kind of like Sailor Moon.
I remember she had like a little staff thing and then with a little bird on the head. And then it got the staff thing turned weird later. I don't know. I watched the show a lot and I really don't remember it. So I guess that's how memorable it was.
Also, the Spielberg classic from 1982, E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
Hate this movie. It's terrifying.
I wonder if this is the one with the edited out guns.
Probably.
Where they turn into flashlights,
no,
I think.
It's Netflix. They're going to have it in there.
Well, they have the edited version of Back to the Future on there.
No, damn
unfortunately.
Where he doesn't kiss his mom?
No, it's Back to the Future 2. In one of them, it's supposed to be like a porno magazine, but they completely edited it.
Aw. Did you like E.T.?
I thought it was all right. E.T. did scare me as a kid also, but not enough to where I wouldn't watch it.
No, when those guys in the hazmat suits come out, like, no.
That movie was huge, too.
I remember. They were playing it all the time, and I just never... isn't it like the very beginning they find him, and it's real dark, and like M&Ms are disappearing? I was terrified. I'm still scared
Reese's
just thinking.
Pieces.
Something. Whatever he was eating. Fucking candy.
I think M&M's turned it down, and Reese's Pieces is like, we'll do it, and their sales skyrocketed.
Of course it did. Yeah, a lot of people like this, and I never found E.T. charming. I was like, kids, you should tell your parents this is not safe. Even when he was hiding in the stuffed animals and his little head was there, he was still scary.
Another one on this list is Starship Troopers from 1997. It is a sci-fi action film where they fight alien bugs, but it's almost a comedy and almost satire in a way. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's also not it's not like the MCU where it's like a goofy comedy the whole time. There's that right balance between action, gore, and some slight cheese. And I think it's one of those that is going to be a cult classic, years down the line, even though it has been over 20 years now, but I think it'll continue to kind of be revisited and rediscovered.
I've definitely heard about this movie, never watched it. So we'll add it to the same list as Casper, and it will go on and off Netflix 4 times before we see it.
1991's The Silence of the Lambs.
Did I do that right?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Beat out Beauty and the Beast that year for Best Picture.
Listen, if Beauty and Beast gotta lose.
Oscar-winning Anthony Hopkins also beat out Buffalo Bill, unfortunately.
Buffalo Bill was so creepy. I mean, I guess that just means he acted well, so.
Another one that just left Netflix and it's already back, V for Vendetta from 2005. I remember liking that when I was in high school, but I feel like I liked it because everybody liked it. It was cool to like this movie. So I'd have to watch it again more recently to see how it holds up. Also, the second half of season 5 of Fuller House, which is the final season to this. It's kind of fizzled out quick, didn't it?
Yeah, I haven't heard anybody talk about it except for the first episode.
Isn't it because a lot of the original cast aren't really the focus of it or something? They're kind of focusing on the kids more than anything?
Probably, and that's usually how it is when these shows return. But I guess a good example is Girl Meets World, which is the sequel to Boy Meets World, focusing on their kids. I still really thought that was a well put together show. It still faced things that kids that age would face and then had enough of the adults in there to really pull in even me and just be like, yeah, I watched Boy Meets World and I enjoyed it. And I feel like Fuller House didn't do that. The characters, I guess, this far down the road weren't really as charming as they were. I never liked Full House. I did watch a video. I guess there was an episode where some kid was getting abused by his dad. And one of the girls did something and just got him beat up more.
All right.
And I was like, whoa, this was a dark show too.
Another one on this list is One Piece seasons 1 through 3. It's considered by many, I think it's the longest running manga currently of all time. And by many, it's considered one of the best anime. I've never seen it. I know there's a lot of it out there. And I think it was on Netflix, Hulu, but now it's also on Netflix.
Who cares
They're
about
pirates,
One Piece?
though.
No, but it's lame pirates. You want to know what I know about One Piece? I did see a few episodes, never pulled me in because it was like magic and pirates, and I'm not about magic. Shut up. I know Pirates of the Caribbean is all magic and pirates. This is different. The one thing I really remember about One Piece is my best friend's little brother had a poster of whoever the main girl is with the giant boobs on his door, and he would just stare at it all the time. And I was like, this is so uncomfortable because he was at least 6 years younger than me. So he was like 8 or 9 at the time and just staring at this girl in a bikini. And I was like, this is not okay.
Not something you'd let Leo have, I'm guessing.
No.
One thing I will say about the Disney Pirates of the Caribbean in terms of magic, it's Aztec magic. So
thank you. Okay, that makes
Mayan,
me feel
so
better.
I can kind of relate to that magic a little bit.
He's not growing his arms real long.
I'm sort of represented, although Barbosa has that Spanish last name,
Yeah.
although I don't think the character is at all portrayed as a Spaniard.
Just let him live his life or not live his life anymore.
It's still my favorite character,
as it
though.
were.
Yeah. Pokemon Trainers, Pokemon Journeys, the new season exclusively on Netflix, has hit this month. If it has the track record of Sun and Moon, X and Y, then this will also be an awesome season.
Not as great as season 1, but I mean, whatever.
This one I personally recommend is 2008's Frost Nixon.
I do remember that one with his little dog. That was my favorite part, was that cute little dog. This was a pretty good movie. I think we saw it. Wasn't it nominated for an Oscar that year?
5 Oscars.
5. Wow. But wasn't it? It was part of that run that AMC used to do where you could go and sit and watch all of them.
Yeah.
And I remember that was the second time we saw it, maybe. That was pretty cool. I wish we just had like the youth and the freedom
right.
to sit in a theater for an entire day and watch movies.
Yeah, that one was directed by Ron Howard, stars Michael Sheen and Frank Langella. Really good. I'm going to watch it again this month for sure.
What else we got?
Last one here is a stand-up debut on Netflix, someone I haven't seen in many years now. It is George Lopez, Will Do It for Half, a Netflix original.
George Lopez is still around.
Can't wait to watch this.
He was just on that episode of Hartley.
That's true, yeah.
As himself, and he was just doing some comedy in the pit.
He had like 3 lines, I think, in that episode, but it was him.
It was him. He was just him. I used to watch his show. I loved his show. It came on at like midnight. So I would sleep for a little bit and then always wake up at midnight and I'd be like, let me turn on the TV. And I was like, oh my, and everybody's jumping around. And I'm like, yeah.
I loved his stand-up in Latin Kings of Comedy. Great set in that where he talks about the Mexican parents when you get hurt with, he says white parents, they run over and they're like, oh, what's wrong? Are you okay? But with Mexican parents, it's, see, that's what you get. That's what you get for running. Or that's what you get for climbing that. Go ahead, climb it again, fall again, do it.
Now, you say that, but I feel like out of the two of us, you run over and pick him up.
Oh, I'm not saying I do those things, but I have been told, you see, that's what you get. I have definitely been told
and I tell that to our son. I am embracing your heritage, embracing it, and trying to bring that to our son, whereas you're running over and like, oh no.
No, that's his grandparents.
That's
yes.
true.
But when he throws himself on the floor, I'm like, no, that doesn't work here.
No.
I'm good.
I don't respond to terrorists. Have you ever seen that meme?
No.
It was a tweet or something where a kid's like laying on the ground and the parent was talking like he told his kid to do so, or his kid asked for something and he said no. And he says, if you don't give this to me, I'm going to hold my breath. And then the dad goes, I don't respond to terrorists. And what he says, and I don't know that this actually happened, but the kid held his breath till he passed out. And the parent's like, at least it's quiet now.
But there you have it, everyone. Those are the Netflix June 2020 highlights. If you have some extra time after you're done getting all of the HBO Maxing you can get, and head on over to Netflix and check out some of those recommendations.
The HBO Maxing. Are we going to make it a verb? You're maxing out today?
You heard it here first.
Copyright.
If it takes off, yeah.
Copyright. Hashtag maxing.
Let's go into our thank yous for the week. It is our Patreon shout outs.
These are the thank yous to everyone who helps make the show possible. We have 6 shout outs this week. The first one goes out to Alexander at Swordfish Show on Twitter. You can also find him at purpleswordfish.com.
Alexander, out of nowhere, big surprise, returned to his Madden streams on YouTube, didn't announce it ahead of time. There were some hints, a little bit here and there, but not like a definitive, on this day, the stream returned.
You weren't looking at the stars and his location and what coffee shop he's going to.
But he put it up, and a lot of the familiar names I saw in the chat there, I'm like, holy shit, there it is.
That's awesome.
And he went back to, I think it is the latest version of Madden, and he even had some feedback that he gave to EA on Twitter. So it's pretty exciting to see if he continues on this Madden run and what this means for his future streams as well.
Next on the list, we have Lourdes and Katie on Twitter at CatCatFluffs.
Katie created a custom Deathstroke comic short box.
That's awesome.
She cut up some, I think it's Batman versus Deathstroke issues with the pages, and I don't know what kind of glue it is. It's like a clear coating that you put on there. Yeah, I guess it is. And put it all throughout it. Painted the short box black. And I'm guessing she's putting all of her Deathstroke issues in there.
That's so
cool. It looks cool. It's always neat when you see comic collectors get really creative with the way they store their books.
Next up, we have Bobby on Twitter at Cuban Slim.
Bobby has started reading Batman White Knight. He shared his thoughts on Discord, and he's found a lot of the little cool Easter eggs that Sean Murphy puts in there. Next
up, we have John, Instagram at Johnny2Chips. You can also find a YouTube podcast, Dom Cheeto Show.
Dom Cheeto Show.
Oh, I can't read.
He's been putting up Darwin Cook covers, including a Memorial Day JSA number 50.
Darwin Cook. He had some fantastic art.
The great late Darwin Cook. And John is a big fan of his. Has a huge collection of Darwin stuff also.
That's awesome.
Next shout out goes out to Neil on Twitter at nmats68. His Instagram is at nmats.photography.
Neil posted a photo of the silhouette of a cat with the caption, quote, "One of the neighbor's cats got up in the tree yesterday. I was trying to find it, so I used the camera and got some pictures as well. About 7 hours later, he decided to head down and home." End quote.
That's cats for you.
That's cats. There's a cat in the neighborhood who likes to lay in our yard, and Ace runs past it all the time.
Just ignores it?
She just doesn't see it. And I'm like, Ace, I can see it. It's right there, Ace. And she's just like, like looking everywhere else but where it actually is.
And the final shout out this week goes out to Brian on Twitter at BrianSchaub1.
Brian considers Red Border #1, AWA Studios a must-read.
AWA has really taken off. I know Year Zero recently sold out at my local comic shop. We got a few more copies in, but all of their #1 issues from the indie readers and some collectors have been doing really well for them. And I know the COVID closures did kind of put a dent in that, unfortunately, because some of that steam, I think, got lost in there. But it'll be interesting to see how many issue 2s we do end up selling, because that means that they retain their readership through that.
So thank you so much, Brian, Neil, John, Bobby, Lourdes and Katie, and Alexander for your Patreon support.
If you too would like your shout out, head on over to patreon.com/thereasonsimebroke. Or if you want to be heard, leave us a voicemail. There's a link in the description, but you can also head on over to speakpipe.com/thereasonsimebroke. Whether it's a comment or a question, leave it on in there and you may be heard on the next episode.
But of course, our podcast may someday not be free. The best thing, I was saying if they were paying attention, that's all it was. Our podcast will always be free. Best thing you can do is to let your friends know about us, share it with somebody else, buy multiple copies and just start distributing them. That brings more viewers to us. That helps get us more Patreon backers. And then we can continue with the show as we have been.
All right, we have our comic book review coming right up. It is our comic highlight of the week.
As we said in the beginning, we have a portion from Catwoman 80th Anniversary #1.
This is written by Paul Dini, Chuck Dixon, Tom King, and many more. Art by Mikel Janin, Emanuela Lupacino, Cameron Stewart, and many more. Colors by Laura Allred, John Calise, Wes Abbott, and...
nobody else. That's it. No,
just those
many
three.
More. Many more.
We had to record this episode a little bit earlier in the week than we normally do, so we couldn't put out that poll for this week, but Palpa Kelly ended up picking this one out herself.
I sure did. Of course, I am a huge Catwoman fan. I love the relationship between her and Batman. And this book, like we've seen a similar format with other characters, is a great number of short stories about the character, focusing on different time periods, right? She's written differently in each one. Some stories are lighter, some are deeper, some are longer, right? So if you're a fan of Catwoman, this is, I definitely think, a must for your collection, because even if there's one story that you don't connect with, that doesn't mean that there won't be 3 or 4 more others that you're like, wow, that was really solid.
Much like the Robin 80th, Green Lantern 80th, and the upcoming Joker 80th, this is going to be a tribute copy or tribute issue to the character of Selina Kyle in her different iterations throughout all of her 80 years. So you get a 1980s version of Catwoman. You also get the more modern version. You even get an extended story, which was your favorite part of the book,
yes,
on Tom King's version of Catwoman and Bruce's relationship, including that Catwoman pregnancy that you were very critical of because you don't think she should be running around fighting bad guys in that suit as she's pregnant. And in this comic, not only did we get that panel that you were pointing out, but we get several pages of her actually kicking ass, jumping around, big as hell, and fighting crime.
Listen, she can do what she wants, but I don't think Tom King understands pregnancy.
I like how this is how you get it your way, like either way. Like she can still have that, but he doesn't get it.
He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand. Has he ever walked around with like a 30-pound bowling ball on his stomach and tried to balance?
These are also comics. I think it's fine.
Okay.
How would you have written it? Where she stays at home instead? Or it's 2020. He couldn't have done that.
Just listen. Let's just talk about the first story. I really enjoyed the first story too with the taxidermist.
Paul Dini.
Yeah, that was really great. It felt like a darker Batman the Animated Series story, which of course is what we expect from Paul Dini because he wrote some of the greatest Batman the Animated Series episodes.
Yeah, that was a good one. I enjoyed that. I liked... There's a Darwin Cookish one by Cameron Stewart right near the end. And it has that version of Catwoman, that suit with the goggles that he immortalized, I think, in comics and in media. That look, I think, will always be remembered. And Cameron Stewart does an amazing Darwin Cook impression in that. And it's not an exact replica of it. He's still doing his own thing. Or Cameron Stewart's still doing their own thing. But I think it fits in perfectly with that run of Catwoman books from the, I want to say 2000s.
Oh, I remember those. They had some great issues in there. I didn't get through the whole book yet. It is ginormous, and I'm very excited. I got through about the first fourth, but I think there's only one story in there that I didn't really connect with, and that was the guy who was watching the cameras, and he's like, I'm going to go try and be her bookie or whatever. And I was like, what? Dude, who are you? Get out of here.
Yeah, you get your lame ass.
Get your lame ass. You're not doing nothing.
Inevitably, there's going to be some stories in here that are not going to resonate with us because it is literally the creators even are from the different eras of Catwoman even. So some of these stories are going to feel dated, but that's kind of the idea behind this, is that this is, in some of the ways that they celebrate her era, they bring in people from that era of comic books to return to Catwoman. Like Chuck Dixon, longtime writer, he has a story in here as well. So I think if you've enjoyed the previous ones like the Robin one, and you are a fan of Catwoman, you're going to find a lot in here that to celebrate along with the creators, along with DC Comics.
Definitely agree. I do want to dive into a little bit more that Tom King story, right? Where she is, and I thought it opened hilariously, where she's like, I don't feel right. It's cancer. I have cancer. And then Batman's like, nope. And she's like, fuck. There were a lot of pieces in that story that I really, really liked. And I liked it as a whole because I liked their relationship. But yeah, Batman was not very Batman. And I liked his character in it, but I didn't see it as Batman, right? Like my heart knew, but my brain was like, no, he wouldn't really do these things. He wouldn't just smile at her to let her know that she was pregnant.
Right.
He wouldn't. I realistically, I think Batman would have made her stay at home. I get that he's going back and forth, like, I can't make you do anything. What Tom King essentially did is created this really strong, awesome character of Selina, and shaped Batman into something that could fit around that rather than really find a way for them to work together.
I think our Batman would have told Selena with a back glare, and then she would have known that she was pregnant.
It's cancer, isn't it? Oh, no, fuck, pregnant.
It's not. Burr, 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 burr.
Would it be more lullaby-y? Burr, 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 burr.
But there it is. It is a $9.99 book, just like the other ones. I'm excited for the Joker one.
I think that'll be really cool. Harley has to be in there. She got to be in there somewhere.
Definitely. And I hope Paul Dini writes that one.
I hope Paul Dini writes the one where Joker is in love with Batman and just talking about how much he loves Batman.
If anyone wants to do it, it's him and or Bruce Timm.
But that does wrap up our comic book highlight for the week. I'm so glad we get to do comic book highlights again.
Yeah.
Back at it. It's a lot of fun. But moving forward, we do have our Brocat block, which is what happened with Daniel and I this week.
So this story, you've been waiting until we recorded. You didn't want to tell me.
I didn't want to tell you about this.
What happened at the Indian restaurant you visited today?
So, some background. Daniel loves Indian food. I do not. But as a kind wife that I am, somebody on Facebook was like, this Indian place is great and it's super close to our house. So I said, okay, I'm going to go and pick up this Indian food for Daniel because I love him and I want him to have food that he enjoys. So that's kind of the background. I tried to call in an order to this place for pickup, and the first time I called and they hung up on me, and the second time I called and they didn't answer their phone. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to pack up Leo and we're going to go, and I'll just get there and I'll order it and we'll wait. 15 minutes, however long it takes to make. And then, of course, on the way, I tried to call again and they answered and they're like, okay, it's going to be 30 minutes from now. I was like, I'm just going to go back home. So that's the beginning, right? So then it's finally time to go pick up our food and I go to get it and I have it on my little MapQuest. Is MapQuest a thing anymore?
MapQuest.
Google Maps. And I get to where it says I need to go and there's nothing there. So like I'm driving around the block and I'm driving around the block again and I cannot find this place. And I'm like, did they move? What's going on? So it turns out that this Indian restaurant is in the back of an Indian supermarket. So the sign for this place the sign that's up is not even what it is. Mm-hmm. They have a random sign hanging underneath it that's just a bunch of pictures. And in very small writing at the bottom, it's actually the restaurant name. So I was like, okay. So I walk in and it's just this huge Indian food market that I didn't even know existed. It was 5 minutes from our house. I didn't even know. And so I get to the back of the store, which is where it is. And there's 3 people in line in front of me. And we're waiting. And the people in line in front of me are every stereotype you could possibly think of.
Do I need to edit this out?
No, probably not. So the guy at the very front is a white guy in full coronavirus gear with his mask. Mm-hmm. And anytime someone moves, like his eyes are real shifty. Anytime someone moves, he moves farther away from them. So he's consistently maintaining 6 feet of space.
Yeah.
At all times. But it wasn't even natural. Like he was very obviously moving away from everybody. And I'm just like, oh my God. The guy after him was an Uber Eats driver.
Okay.
He was Jamaican because he had on a Jamaican hat and his long dreads and very long fingernails, which I don't know why that's what I noticed, but very long fingernails, who's just standing there. And then the next guy is an older Indian gentleman who waits for 2 minutes, 2 other people in front of him, right? Gets pissed off and goes up and is ringing the bell to get them to come out. And the second he skips us all in line, the other white guy just looks at me because I'm the only other white person in the building. And he was looking for solidarity.
Or like a, can you believe this type of thing?
Probably. But he's still shifting because the guy moved to the front, right? So he had to move farther away. So the older Indian gentleman's like ringing the bell. And the guy comes out from the back because I guess there's only 2-3 chefs tonight, something like that. And he's like, this is my name. This is what I have. And he's like, your name's Charles? And he's like, no, it's this other thing. Well, they had taken his name down as Charles, so they can't find. So they're all yelling back and forth into the kitchen looking for this food. And it's just sitting on the counter. So then the guy gets on the phone and he's asking his wife, like, well, what did we order? And they all go, it was this whole thing. Meanwhile, the guy in the very front of the line keeps looking at me like, what's going on? What did we walk into?
See, I like to imagine the guys arguing and walking, like pacing back and forth on each side of the counter, and the white guy like still shifting to maintain that 6-foot distance around everyone.
So again, we're in a supermarket, so he's like in the cooler now where they have all the yogurts. And he's just standing, and the Uber Eats driver's just on his phone. He doesn't care. So they came out about 4 times to ask me my name and what I ordered. And every time one would come out and ask, the other one would go, no, it's this. This is what you ordered.
Fuck, for fuck's sake, man. I hate that shit.
So they kept going back and forth. And at this point, it's been like 10 minutes past when they said our food would be ready. But I was like, I'm not going to leave now because they've told me 4 times they've already started it. And I get it. They're a small business. Like, it's real shitty if I'm like, just don't worry about it and I peace out. I was like, it should almost be done. So at one point, the kitchen gets really loud in the back. And everybody starts talking in Spanish in the back kitchen. I'm like, what's going on?
That sounds right.
And this little Spanish lady comes walking out and she's like, bye, and just leaves for the day. And I was like, okay. At the same time, another older Indian gentleman comes up with no shoes and walks into the back. I'm like, where are his shoes? Why is he walking around the supermarket with no shoes?
It's an authentic experience.
Oh my God. It just kept getting crazier and crazier. And so 20 minutes later, they finally hand me my food. And they're like, we're so sorry. And I was just like, whatever. Here's your 15% tip because this was a dinner and a show. But it was so crazy. My favorite was just the guy who kept moving, though.
Did he ever get his food?
He did. He got his food first. No. First, the older Indian gentleman got his because it was already on the counter. And then the other guy got it. There were 2 Ubers by the time that I left, and neither of them had gotten their food. So I think they were like, well, these people actually called in, and so we're going to give them their food first. Oh, and it was after the close of the supermarket, so they turned the lights off.
In the middle of this all?
In the middle of all of this, like half the lights go off, and I'm like, well, this is just where I am now.
What's Leo doing this whole time?
He wasn't with me.
Okay.
That's when he stayed with you.
Right. The first time he went with you. Yeah.
Right. The first time he went with me, we only like exited the neighborhood when I put in the order.
Gotcha.
So I came back. I was so glad he wasn't with me though, because he would have been like up and down the aisles too. And I just
and the guy would have been moving even more every time Leo ran past him.
It was hilarious. It just, if I could have like, I don't know, it was like an episode of Seinfeld or something.
Well, you can fit the Curb Your Enthusiasm somewhere in there at some point, right?
There you go. Yes, Larry would have been there, just like, what's going on? I just want my naan. But how was the food?
It was good.
All right.
I liked it.
Good.
It wasn't spicy enough, but it was good.
I told them to make it hot. They did make it hot.
Yeah, but you told them to make it hot. If I or any other brown person would have told them, they would have definitely made it like true hot.
I was over the phone. They couldn't have known.
They heard you. You can hear your voice. They can hear your white.
All right, fine. Anyway, it was hilarious.
That was a great story. I enjoyed it. I'm glad you saved it for the podcast.
Yeah, right? Because then you could experience it in full force of what I went through to get you your delicious food.
True reactions. For the Brokehead Quarter, enjoy too.
I want to know more about the man without the shoes. Why would you step into a kitchen without shoes?
Different standards, Kelly.
I don't know. Tile without shoes really freaks me out.
Outside of that great Indian restaurant story, how has work been for you?
Pretty good. When looking across the board at all of the metrics that we possibly or that we typically look at, my store is number 1 in the district. In certain metrics, I'm number 1 in the area. So that's, again, all of Central Florida. So we're just doing really great things. I have my performance review coming up in about 2 weeks. I suspect it'll be pretty good. Mm-hmm. So definitely see how that goes. But my store is doing really, really great. The company as a whole is doing much better. And so, I still love what I do. It wasn't as mind-blowing as like maybe some of the past few weeks have been, but we're still growing. And so I just have to keep that in my mind. Like, even though they weren't a leap like we did that 1 week or, these past 2 weeks, there's still strides forward. And of course, there's always something you could forever work on. So it's been pretty good. I need a break, 100%. I'm so tired. There's just so much going on all the time. It's been a long 6 months.
Yeah, hopefully soon we'll get our break. I know a lot of you like the Leo update. These are like the terrible twos updates at this point. He is fighting his showers.
He's fighting everything.
Even the illusion of choice that you give him doesn't always work.
No.
Like do you want a shower or do you want a bath? That used to work. Now he just shakes his head no.
He's like, and smiles. No, no, not going to happen. Yeah, he's just very opinionated. He wants to do what he wants to do when he wants to do it. He doesn't want to listen to you. And he's getting in trouble.
Yesterday, I had to promise him ice cream. And I was like, do you want ice cream? And he goes, mm-hmm. I'm like, all right, let's go take a bath first, and then we'll get ice cream. He ran right into the bathroom. All right, cool.
And then what did you do, Danny?
Well, 30 fucking minutes later, he's done playing. He, brushed his teeth, all that shit. We're in his room. I'm thinking he forgot about the fucking ice cream. He runs right out of his room, goes into the kitchen, stands in front of the freezer, and is yelling. What's his word for ice cream? It's like,
sa.
Yeah.
Sa.
And I'm like, what? And you said his ice cream. He didn't forget his ice cream. I'm like, son of a gun. He fucking didn't forget.
He's a smart little kid. He just does not forget anything.
And I told that story to my mom, and she said it's important that you make sure you give him that ice cream because you don't want to break those promises early on, because then they're not going to trust you for anything.
It's very true. That's something that my dad always told me growing up is like, my yeses are yes and my no's are no's. So understand if I tell you something, unless I come back, like if I tell you no and get different information and come back and I'm like, okay, because of this information, it's a yes now. You always have to stick by those things because not only do your kids trust your word, but that's also a great form of stability. And they see that stability and they know that they can lean on that. He does do something really cute now when it's nap time. I think I told you about it the other day, where he has to hop around the bed like a frog.
Great choice of animal.
So he hops around and he can't ribbit. So he just goes, ja, ja, just like that, right? And hops around the bed a few times. Then he looks at me and I have to go, oh, it's a little frog. Why don't you come and cuddle? And then he has to hop all the way to me and he smiles and it's the cutest smile ever. And then he's able to curl up and take a nap. And I don't know why this started. I don't know why he chooses to be a frog when it's nap time, but that's what we do.
I approve.
Although also for bedtime, you got to see it tonight. Anytime I tell him to get in bed, he takes his stuffed frog and he has to put it in his toy box, crawl all the way in bed, and then ask for his toy frog.
He sets up these scenarios so that we end up staying longer or having to go back into his room.
Yes. I saw a Twitter thread once where it was a mom recording everything her kid asked her to try and keep her in there longer. And it's pretty hilarious stuff. We will definitely be there soon with Leo.
Final thing for the Brocat block is if you head on over to our YouTube channel, we put up that Harley Quinn unboxing we were teasing last week. It is the Sideshow Collectibles Harley Quinn from the animated series collection. It features Bud and Lou, both hyenas. She's right behind them. It is a gorgeous piece, and we do talk about it a little bit on the unboxing, but do you have any extra thoughts on this massive statue?
Not more than we covered in the unboxing. It's absolutely gorgeous. If you haven't seen a picture, I suggest you look it up. If you're a fan of the animated series, I almost want to say it's a must-have for your collection. You know, Harley, I fell in love with her through the animated series, so I think this piece really captures who she is, kind of that craziness that she's in when she's running around with two hyenas, right? You'd have to be crazy to do that, but definitely represents her very well. And the way the statue is built is just amazing and really shows that the piece is going to last a long time because of little touches like the magnets instead of pegs and different small things like that.
And it's our favorite version of Harley Quinn, straight from the animated series. And yes, she is sculpted in a stylistic way where they still make it their own Harley Quinn, but to us, it still rings. That's from the cartoon, even if it's slightly season 4-ish, I guess. But the two hyenas in that particular episode and that design are definitely seasons 1 through 3. So,
well, even her teeth, I don't know if you noticed, aren't quite completely white.
Oh, nice. No, I have to take a look again.
So originally, like comic book, right? Her teeth were yellow.
Even in the cartoon.
Yeah, even in the cartoon for a brief. And then when she got more popular, they changed it to white, right? Because it's more appealing. But yeah, her teeth, they aren't quite as yellow as they were, but they're still not quite completely white.
Make sure to check out that full unboxing. Our YouTube channel link is at thereasonsimbroke.com. Scroll all the way at the bottom.
But with that, we will wrap up our show for the day.
Thank you all so much for tuning in this and every week. If this was your very first episode, we hope you enjoyed and thank you for sticking around till the very end. We hope you're here for us next week too.
Thank you so much. I am your Emperor Pal Kelli.
And I am Parasol Lady Daniel.
And Brocat Core. All will be well. If you could have Sideshow make you a statue of anything, what would it be?
Well, they've already done Superman Red Sun, which sold at my store last week. I know. I was just telling Brian about it. We'll stick to that as the post thing because we didn't talk about it on the show, but it was my favorite statue in the store. We've had it at the Orlando store for over 4 years, I think. And they eventually came out with the Red Sun Wonder Woman and the Red Sun Batman. And at one point, we had the Red Sun Trinity, right there on display. Gorgeous. But Superman was my favorite one because it is from my favorite DC comic of all time. Probably one of my favorite comics of all time. And when the owner opened up this other store, he said, Daniel, what statues do you want to take from this store over to the other one to try to sell? Because he was pretty much splitting the product between the two and ordering some new stuff. And I said, I don't care what other statues you want to bring over, but definitely bring that Superman Red Sun. And we did. And it was an amazing display. People always constantly ask me, including you, why don't you just buy it if you like it so much? And then my thing, and it's true, is I see it more here than I would if it were at home because I'm here at work, and I did it all the time. I'd be typing away, doing my work, and then I'd look over and I'd see the Superman Red Sun and go back. Anytime I'm dusting around the store.
A little bit. And
anytime I'm dusting, it's like, oh, time to dust off the Superman and like the little red insignia, the thing that he stands on, the big base, like dust that shit off. And then another excuse to take a look at him. Like, oh, this is so cool. The suit is actual fiber. And apparently last week on my day off, it sold.
No.
So I couldn't even be the one to box him back up or
and,
have that crazy.
Kiss him goodbye.
Yeah.
Aww.
Or have that crazy moment of, no, don't.
It's not for sale. It's not for sale.
When I think I even asked at one point, like, can I just buy it and leave it here? And like just take up product space that could be used for actually profiting in the store. And it's unfortunate. I know it's worth more than the $600 where we're selling them for because sideshow pieces always go up in value. And it was probably purchased by a collector, but it was, I'm not sad because it's gone, but I'm happy because it happened.
Can you get that tattooed on yourself with a tattoo of the Red Sun statue?